It's time to plant garlic. We're getting all our patio furniture put away. It's early November still. This is actually pretty early for me. I usually plant garlic later. Got my big box of garlic here. This is not all for, it's a big box, not all for planting right now. My uncle is an organic garlic farmer, grows amazing music variety garlic, and I used to grow enough that we replenished our own stock, but then we moved and I've had to start from scratch, and so I got this giant box. This is enough to eat through the winter and to plant enough so that we can eat it all next winter, plus save enough seed garlic from this that we can keep our supply going on our own. So I need to get a basket or something to start separating these bulbs into cloves, and then I need to figure out where they're gonna go. So I've grown garlic for more than 10 years now. It's one of the first crops that I tried to grow to sustain my family, like enough garlic that we wouldn't need to buy garlic from the store. And I have always had great success with it, except when I tried soft neck. Soft neck didn't do well. It's probably something to do with my climate. I'm in Ontario. It's not like a super cold climate. We're zone 6, but the winters can get down to minus 25, minus 30 at the worst of it, Celsius. And I think that soft neck garlic just doesn't like it quite that cold. Music is a really resilient garlic variety, also massive. I mean, the cloves are a little bit ridiculous. Almost too big. It's almost like you have to cut one of these cloves in half. And I like garlic a lot, but like most recipes, when they call for 1 clove, it's actually like half of this. Yeah, so I really like this music variety for this climate. It's always been successful for me. I've never had a challenge. I've grown it, I've planted it all different times of the fall. Oh my gosh, that is 1 clove. And I've had the most success, like biggest cloves, absolutely no spotty germination, like 100% of what I've planted comes up when I plant a little later in the season. And a lot of people out there, or guides or whatever, will say, it's September, it's time to plant your garlic. But actually, you want to plant garlic after frost. If you get frost in your area, you want to plant it after frost, and when your nights are consistently freezing, either at freezing or slightly below freezing, and your days are like 5 to 10, 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. If you plant them too early and you end up with like a lot of those 20 degrees Celsius days in September, which happens, it happens even in October, then your garlic sprouts, which is fine. Garlic can handle sprouting and then freezing, but it may actually stunt the plant a little bit, because if it freezes those greens really hard, like you have nice garlic greens like this coming up and then you get minus 30, it'll freeze them off. Like they're pretty tolerant. The bulbs are incredibly tolerant to the cold, but the leaves themselves, there is a limit. And what'll happen is those will die back and they'll have to regrow in the spring, and so you do lose a little bit of time there, and they may regain the size that you would get, but it will take a little bit longer. So I typically plant mine in November. This is actually a little early for me. I have planted mine as late as like the very end of November, and the ground is like almost frozen. I've planted garlic in the snow before, and it does great. I've planted garlic in wood chips. When I first moved to this place, we had no good soil, and so I just laid down a bunch of wood chips to try to build that soil, and I just dug a hole in like very, very partially decomposed wood chips, very early stages of decomposition. And by next spring, I had beautiful garlic coming up. And it's an amazing, amazing crop. I know some people have challenges with it, and I cannot tell you why. I just don't know why that would happen. It's been such an easy crop for me. My gardening's like that. I mean, probably because I'm saying this, next year I'm going to be incredibly humbled by my garlic crop. I don't even remember the correct spacing. I think it's like 4 inches deep, maybe 3-4 inches deep. I have done it super randomly. I'm not going to measure the whole depth, but I do make sure I cover it with a nice layer of mulch, like fall leaves. It's a great mulch for garlic. This year in particular, I'm planning to bring in a big load of compost or maybe some more of that great triple mix I got last year to top up all my raised beds where a lot of this garlic is going. And because the garlic is going in the ground now in the fall, and I'm not topping up the beds until spring, I'm actually going to plant this garlic pretty shallow, like no more than 2 inches at the most, maybe 1.5 inches. And I'm going to put copious amounts of leaves on top, maybe even some chopped straw. I'm just going to go nuts on the mulch, and that will protect it from damage in the winter. Also, we tend to get, except for last year, we tend to get a pretty consistent snow cover, and that's a great insulator. It'll keep your garlic insulated, keep it from too harsh of a freeze that it could damage the bulbs. Alright, I'm not even keeping track here. I've got a good amount to start with. Oh yeah, I'm gonna need way more. I'm gonna plant some in a raised bed. Probably this one because it's the only one that's actually relatively empty right now. I have a lot of fall stuff going on in the gardens, which is great. It's a huge win. Fall gardening can be really difficult here because we often go from summer to winter to summer. There's that transition season is often not much of anything. Goes from cold to hot, hot to cold. Anyway, so it's a super lucky year having such a good fall garden, but it means I don't really have any empty beds. I have one, and it's a tomato bed, so I have these trellises that I plant the tomatoes along in a line. They take up maybe 12 inches of depth in a 3-foot wide bed because I trellis them very tightly. So there's plenty of room to fill the rest of that space, that remaining 2 feet of space, in an 8-foot long bed with garlic. And I'm gonna eyeball this because that's what I do, but I've heard that if you give it 6 inches of space between cloves, it gives you your best chances at huge garlic cloves. I don't want huge garlic cloves. I want reasonably sized garlic cloves. I've planted them 4 inches, maybe even less if I'm feeling sloppy, and it's been perfectly fine. So that's what I'm going for here. 3 to 4 inches apart probably in a row, and then maybe each row would be 4 to 6 inches apart. So I'm gonna put a bunch in a raised bed. I typically don't want my gardens to be all one thing right in a row. Like we have the leek moth, which is a pest that attacks garlic. We have that in our area. And if all my garlic is in one place, the leek moth is just gonna have a buffet and it can decimate my whole crop. Typically, my garlic has still been edible, it's been fine after leek moths have gotten into it, but you can risk your bulbs not storing over winter. So I like to diversify my planting for that reason, and so I will put some bulbs in random places, in flower beds, just in the mulch that I have around. I would plant them sporadically through all of my raised beds, but again, it's a little tricky because I don't have my garden planned for next year. I don't know where things are going yet, and I still have fall things in the ground, and I'm planning to bring in a whole bunch of compost or triple mix in the spring to top things up. So I really don't want these just willy-nilly in every raised bed. I do want them that way, but it's just not going to work out this year. Now, I have also successfully transplanted garlic. You're always told, like, root vegetables, including bulbs, do not transplant well after they've started growing, after they've sprouted. But last year the raised beds were filled in the spring. I couldn't plant them in the fall, the raised beds weren't full, so I stuck them randomly in wood chips. But when the raised beds were filled, I pulled some sprouted garlic that I could see in my wood chip areas and my flower beds. I dug them up and I moved them to the raised beds where I wanted them. And they did amazingly. They weren't even set back at all. So it's true, you can transplant garlic in the right conditions, I guess. This looks like a bed I would lay down in. Alright, that's the gist of it. I still am going to plant a few more cloves, just sort of randomly in the wood chip areas. And we will find out how well this stuff grows for us in the spring.